All right, we are going to be delving into Creation Watch, and today we're doing something kind of classic, something I can't believe I haven't mentioned before, and maybe this should have been in CryptoCorner too, but I needed something for Creation Watch, and I actually had my target picked out, who I was going to talk about. But before I do, I do want to just say, I do not endorse or support this channel that I'm responding to today. They are very popular for debate formats. They have the exclusive on 𝗠𝗿𝗶হি debates. If you want to debate 𝗠𝗿𝗶hi, you have to go over to their channel in order to do so. Not really fair, but that's the only place he's willing to engage at. We are talking about Standing for Truth Ministries. Now, I'm not actually watching the Standing for Truth video today. This is actually going to be from, as you can see, it's from Young Earth Creation, which is Raw Matt's channel. He's half of Standing for Truth. Now, what is my problem with Standing for Truth Ministries? I don't have any personal issues with Donnie. Donnie's never done anything to me. I don't know. I have friends that have had bad interactions with Donnie. I have friends that have had good interactions with Donnie. My issue is with Raw Matt, the other half, and whose channel we are on now. Calls himself Matt Man too, apparently. I did not know that was a thing, but so I'm going to tell my whole life story about my entry into the skeptical YouTube community. I don't know how many people out there remember our good friend Bill Ludlow. He was a very good friend of the Hive. I learned a lot from him. I was very active on his channel. He had a lot of good information to share and stuff to say, but he was not exactly tech savvy, so we had a kind of a team of people helping him out with getting his YouTube channel and everything off the ground. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that, at least for a small window of time. But Bill has left us. Bill has died, had cancer and passed away, and our friend here, I shouldn't say friend, Raw Matt, had some very nasty things to say about the death of Bill Ludlow. So that's why I can't support him. Matt, if you're watching this, I know you, when I told you in Joe Hubbard's side chat that I was doing a response to one of your videos, you started following me. So if you see this, I definitely welcome you to retract what you said about Bill Ludlow, or say it was a joke and bad taste. If you would be willing to say that, we could probably have some decent interactions. I don't think that I would want to interact with you if you're going to stand firm on what you said about Bill, because I don't think that's true about him. I think that, you're making a lot of hyperbolic estimations about what happened in his final days. Basically, they said that, he said he was giving Bill the Darwin Award because he died of a treatable cancer and didn't report it. You don't know, Matt. You don't know what sort of treatment plan Bill had. You don't know who he talked to, who he shared it with. Just because he didn't share it with you or make it public does not mean he wasn't working on getting treatment. That is not fair. That is not a fair assessment on your part, and you have no grounds or basis to make that conclusion of his character, or what happened to him, or what led to his death. As someone who has lost both my father and my father-in-law, and as I was saying, Bill was very important. But Bill was my online skeptic community father, so to speak. So losing all these people in my life to cancer, and for someone to come along and say, "Oh yeah, it was because they were stupid and didn't treat it right," especially somebody who says that they lived for weeks and weeks off of nothing but bee honey, which we can discuss at some point. But I'm not gonna delve into that too much here. I'm going to focus on the topic of the video moving forward. But I just wanted to get that out there that I would be willing to have reasonable interactions with Donnie from Standing for Truth Ministries, but unless Matt wants to recalibrate his position on the death of Bill Ludlow, I will not be interacting with you. And you're missing out on interacting with me because I'm super nice. and I listen to you guys and try to understand your beliefs. So having an interaction with me is not going to be the same as an interaction with your average angry atheist. I'm gonna give you the time to explain. I'm just gonna ask you about your beliefs. So yeah, I would be happy to interact with Donnie. I've been poking at Joe Hubbard, Indiana Joe, wanting to get something set up with him. I'd love to do a debate with Indiana Joe. I reached out to Orge to see if maybe it'd be a fun back and forth between me and Orge and Joe and John Mackey. Is it John McKay or John Mackey? I can't remember, but they're creation research team. They're out of the UK. Joe's pretty nice. McKay's all right. I don't know much about him. I've interacted with him. He does answer my questions when I pose them in the chat. So I think we could have a fruitful conversation. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get into this video because I've been rambling on and on about my feelings towards Standing for Truth Ministry. So I did have a completely different video lined up for them, and then this came out, and I'm like, I can't not talk about this because it's kind of my bread and butter. Here we go.
Hey everyone, Mattman here. I'm going to share a portion of a video with you that I think you're going to love.
Can you all guess why I'm interested in this?
And I think you will find it just as amazing. I was told about this video by Bond, George Bond. And he was correct. This video by Young Earth Creationist Juby is one of my favorites. So I took this portion, or segment, out of his longer video, which had many other topics in it, and I just extracted this clip. So I hope you guys enjoy, and don't forget to follow Ian on his channel called Wazaloo. The link is in the description box below.
In 1977, a Japanese fishing trawler was drag netting off the coast of New Zealand near Christchurch. With their nets some 300 meters deep, they snagged the 10-meter-long carcass of a strange creature weighing in at about 2 tons. The creature sure looked like a plesiosaurus. The carcass reeked a horrid smell of rotting flesh, was dripping liquid fat onto the deck. They didn't have the foggiest clue what this creature was, and here they were, thousands of miles from home. They didn't want it spoiling their catch, their livelihood, so the section chief, Michihiko Yano, took photographs, a few samples of some strange fibers from one of the flippers, noted multiple observations, and drew some sketches. They then threw the carcass back into the ocean. When they got back to Japan, the photographs were developed and drawings were handed over to...
All right, so I don't think that there's probably going to be too many of you who aren't familiar with this carcass. The Zuiyo-maru carcass is what they call it in the cryptozoology community, or the new Nessie. It was a corpse that was. It is description of the catch is not in any way incorrect. It was. The thing he said so far is true and accurate, as far as I know, looking at these cases, and I've studied this case inside and outside, up and down, backwards and forward. Yes, Rain, you're giving spoilers too early in the stream. But the state of decay of this organism, I think Juby misses the point here, but we're gonna let him continue.
Several researchers, Dr. Fujio Yasuda, who is a professor of ichthyology, the study of fish, at Tokyo University, and Professor Yasunori Imaizumi, oh boy, I hope I said that right, who is the Director General of Animal Research at the National...
I hear you, Ian. We can just do our best to pronounce these these names as good as possible, and hopefully we don't offend anybody, but you did a fine job there.
Science Museum. After seeing the photographs and drawings and hearing the testimonies of Yano and the other shipmates, Imaizumi remarked that it's a reptile, and the sketch looks very like...
There's some evidence being drawn here that I don't see any evidence that it's a reptile. But we'll go into that in a little bit. Let's see, to show that these...
Like a plesiosaurus. He further remarked that the evidence seemed to show that these animals are not extinct after all. It's impossible for only one to have survived. There must be a group.
And you got the famous quote mining ellipses here that you'll find a lot of creationists do when they present these sort of slides.
A commemorative stamp was issued celebrating the discovery in 1977. Everyone was in agreement concerning this astonishing find, yet the following year a mysterious thing happened. A team of French scientists became involved and a symposium was assembled that concluded it was merely the corpse of a dead basking shark.
Right, end of video. Good job, Ian. Sorted it out. Nope, he's going to push back on this. Of course he is.
Let us pause for a moment to evaluate the situation in 1977. These people were experts in their field. First of all, the entire ship was a fishing trawler. These people spent their life on the ocean. Do you not think they would know a dead basking shark when they saw one?
No, I don't think that they would, and I don't think that the dead basking sharks are quite as common as you seem to believe they are drifting around the ocean, especially in the state of decay where they would actually be on the bottom. That's why this was a trawler. This was it pulled this up off the bottom of the ocean. I don't think that that anybody on that ship had ever seen a dead basking shark before, Ian. I don't think so at all, because unfortunately, sharks' carcasses sink. They don't have a swim bladder, so they just drop right to the bottom like a stone.
Their testimonies confirmed one another specifically and refuted a dead basking shark interpretation right out of the chute. Michihiko Yano.
Why? I don't see why it refuted the dead basking shark scenario. It looks very much like a dead basking shark to me. I'm not an ichthyologist. I'm not a marine biologist by any means, but I do study cryptozoology quite a bit. I'm a amateur cryptozoologist, if you will, and I've spent many hours looking over this case. You're not swaying me, Ian. Let's see what else you got.
The section chief who took the photos was actually a trained marine biologist. In fact, his education outranked many of the people on the 1978 symposium, and they acknowledged this fact. Do you not think Yano would have known a dead basking shark when he saw one? Professor...
Okay, Yano, again, I don't think Yano is quite in your corner on this, because there's a point where you say that, oh yeah, they didn't have a dorsal fin, for instance, and Yano noted down a dorsal fin. So let's continue here, though.
Imizumai was the Director General of Animal Research at the National Science Museum. Do you not think he would have known a dead basking shark when he saw one?
Why do you keep inferring that everybody's going to know what a dead basking shark looks like? That's a dead basking. This was a rare find. This is one of our earliest finds of a dead basking shark. So, a lot of what we know about the way that they decompose comes from finding these globsters like this. This isn't the only one that we found like this that looks and is shaped in this way as it decomposes. So no, I don't think that we should expect a marine biologist to know the taphonomy of every organism on the bottom of the ocean. I don't think that they could necessarily identify every single organism in various states of decay from the ocean floor, trolled up from the ocean floor.
What followed out of the symposium was suspicious, and frankly, stifled further scientific research, but certainly stopped questioning of evolutionism.
Wait a minute. So it didn't. People still research this today. It's a favorite topic for us crypto sleuthers to dive into. But even the most fervent crypto sleuth generally accepts that this particular globster is a basking shark, and people still research it today, bud, and draw correlations. And we're gonna dive into that after you finish up your little exposition here.
caused by the find. The symposium did not take
I never understood this argument that if they can prove that Mesozoic animals are still alive today, that it would somehow refute evolution. It wouldn't change all the data we have now. It would just add a new piece of data to the data set of the history of evolution and life on Earth, because there's the evidence is overwhelming. There's so many interlinked disciplines of science that all depend on what we understand of evolution being true, and it ties into things like geography, geology. It ties into ecology and forestry. All these different linked medicine, virology. All these things are linked directly to evolution and the notion that evolution is going to happen or has happened in the past.
Testimony from Yeno, a trained marine biologist who had more education on the topic than many of them and had examined the corpse firsthand. The panel publicized their bizarre conclusion that was loaded with contradictions. I, for one, would like to go back over there with a submarine robot, as the oceans are still the most unexplored place on planet Earth. And Imizumai was right. It's impossible for only one to have survived. Malcolm Bowden, publishing is
Well, yeah, it's going to, any organism that's alive today is going to have to be or have been, because like Lonesome George was the last of his kind, a member of a population. Is this argument that this was the last plesiosaur then, or that there are more plesiosaurs out there?
Analysis 22 years ago solidly refuted the basking shark hypothesis, which anti-creationists latched onto and heavily promoted. But
when he says anti-creationist, he's talking about people who accept biology and evolution and science. So, yeah, if you accept that animals evolved, that marine reptiles such as the plesiosaurs went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous, then I think plesiosaurs they might have been extinct before the end of the Cretaceous. Cretaceous. Correct me if I'm wrong, but definitely all wiped out by the end of the Mesozoic. When we had that KT extinction event, or KPG extinction event.
But Bowden was also careful to say it was a plesiosaur-like creature. There was differences between the corpse and anything we know from the fossil record.
There's definitely difference between this corpse and anything we know from the fossil records of plesiosaurs, because plesiosaurs are tetrapods with very distinct tetrapod characteristics. You're a tetrapod too, Ian. And sharks are not. And sharks have shark characteristics, which is what we're seeing here in this organism. There's nothing about this organism that's not shark-like.
Even though our knowledge from the fossil record is certainly incomplete. Let's analyze this. Whenever Jaws showed up in the movie, aside from the music, how did you know Jaws had arrived? Dun 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 dun. The dorsal fin. Hey, where's the dorsal fin? Take a look at the photos yourself. Where's the dorsal fin? All of the experienced fishermen on the boat described the exact same thing.
Talking about fishermen some more, but what we need to talk about is taphonomy, which is the way that organisms decompose. In sharks, namely, they do tend to lose their dorsal fins, not exclusively, but often they lose their dorsal fins during decomposition. They can also lose other appendages as well, but the dorsal fin is probably the most common to be lost during decomposition of a shark. They come off when they're decomposing and scavenging organisms. If we have shark fin soup for a reason, because shark dorsal fins are consumable.
It reeked of rotting flesh and was dripping fat off the corpse. Sharks give off ammonia when they decay, not the smell of rotting flesh. And sharks do not have fat under their skin. 2 more strikes against the basking shark. Look at the red...
Why are we talking about fat dripping off of it. How did they conclude that it was fat that was dripping off, and why is the fat dripping? I'm going to need more details about that, about their reasoning there, and what you think indicates that this had fat dripping off of it. That sounds hyperbolic to me. That sounds like somebody saw substances dripping from the organism and just said it was fat. But you're welcome to respond and explain it to me, Ian, because I don't know how they're concluding what they're seeing as fat dripping off and not some other bodily fluid of the organism. And as far as the smell of rotting sea life, yeah, there's a distinct smell to a dead and decaying shark. But I think by this point of decomposition, all the ammonia would have, or not all the ammonia, but the majority of the ammonia and ammonia smell would have dissipated. This thing is in a high state of decomposition.
Flesh. Basking sharks do not have red flesh. Strike 4. The corpse was dredged up from 900 feet below the surface. When they die, basking sharks float. Mammals sink. Strike 5. The creature...
Absolutely false. The opposite is true. Sharks sink. They don't have a swim bladder, so sharks sink. Just boop, right down to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, that's the opposite of true. What Ian Juby just told you is not a fact. Sharks, because they lack a swim bladder like other fish, they have an oversized liver that they use for buoyancy. But when they die, they sink right to the bottom. Like a stone, Ian.
Had 4 large diamond-shaped flippers in proportion matching the plesiosaurus and in direct contradiction to any kind of shark.
Except for like all male lamniform sharks, which have large diamond-shaped claspers as rear appendages that look like rear appendages. So no, that's not also not true.
Look at them yourself. Here you can see the 2 front flippers, and the rear flippers are just off camera and almost the same size as the...
Almost the same size. So now we can conclude that this is likely a male basking shark. I mean, that's what we're leaning towards now, because you're describing the shark having pectoral fins and then some claspers in the back.
Front ones. Strike 6. The covering of strong dermal fibers, which is visible even in the photographs, is found in mammals, not sharks. Strike 7. The nares, or...
We're going to look at some pictures here in a little bit. Don't worry. We're about decomposing sharks, of decomposing basking sharks. So, yeah.
Or nostril openings are on the front of the skull, not like sharks. Strike 8.
Where are sharks' nasal openings, Ian? I don't know if maybe you don't know this, but yeah, we will again look at the pictures in a minute. So don't worry, we're gonna teach you.
The head was hard bone, not cartilage like what is found in sharks. In fact, Bill Cooper pointed out another observation from the photos. Look at this cable right here. It's under strain and being pushed by the bony skeleton of the creature. The cartilaginous skeleton of a shark would flex and give weight to the cable and not put it under tension. Strike 9.
Why? Just because it's cartilaginous doesn't mean it has to be. It doesn't mean it's silly putty. It still has a rigid breaking point where you're gonna bend or it's gonna break. And this doesn't appear to be at the breaking point yet, where it's going to be necessarily breaking this corpse's bones. But yeah, you could have a bag of jelly up there and it would still bend that cable. You don't need bones. You just need weight. You don't need it doesn't need to be rigid pushing against there. It just needs to be heavy.
The fibers that were collected by Yano were analyzed, and in some ways the amino acids matched those found deep in the fin of a shark, whereas in other ways the amino acids were very different. First of all, if it really is a basking shark, then the amino acids should be an exact match, not a close match, and with several contradictions.
Oh, when we do labs, when we study any organic material under lab conditions, there's always margin for errors for contamination, Ian. It's just the way that labs are. So you're never going to get a perfect match. You're going to get an almost match, especially something that, again, at this stage of decomposition, they've been laying on the bottom of the ocean for quite a long time, being dredged up. There's going to be other factors that come into effect on that amino acid, including contamination. So they do have to have a margin for errors.
Predictions. Secondly, you have to have a living plesiosaur with which to compare. Thirdly, amino acid similarity is pretty meaningless. Rattlesnake heart amino acids called cytochrome C are nearly identical to the cytochrome C found in humans. So you can find matching amino acids in reptiles and humans. Any one of those strike.
Again, that's where is your evidence that wasn't taken into the calculations that this could the amino acids could be? I don't get it. It's that they could be something else. You don't think that they when they check it at amino acid and say, hey, this looks like it come from a human, but snakes have this too. No, there's other ways to look at the genetic material to rule out other organisms or contamination, and that's why we have the margin for error too, Ian.
Demonstrates that is no basking shark, and here we have 10 strikes against.
None of your strikes have stuck. None of these have been convincing or compelling arguments.
No, this was a plesiosaur-like creature that was still recently living. And you can read Malcolm Bowden's excellent analysis in his book, or you can read it online. The plesiosaurs are loosely considered marine dinosaurs, and the possibility that dinosaurs are...
They are not considered dinosaurs. They are reptiles. They are marine reptiles. Dinosaurs are a clade within... All right. Okay, so you got archosaurs, which kind of diverged right after the Permian Jurassic extinction event. Really started to diverge and come into their own. They split into some different clades, but Dinosauria was one of those. Now, during the Triassic, there was a lot of other reptile groups running around that also filled the same kind of small invertebrate clade as the dinosaurs, and there's a lot of competition, and they all went in different directions. You had the dinosaurs, the archosaurs, dinosaurs and crocodilians did really good in the terrestrial biome during the Triassic, kind of dominated that and pushed all these other reptile groups into the margins. Now, some of these other reptile groups, they carved out a niche for themselves in the trees and eventually took to the air and became pterosaurs because they couldn't compete with in the early Triassic, the crocodilians, and then through the rest of the Mesozoic, the dinosaurs. But another group, the group that leads to these plesiosaurs that he's mentioning, they took to the sea instead to carve out a niche for themselves, and they were very successful for a good portion of time. But they are not dinosaurs. They're actually kind of early Mesozoic rivals to the dinosaurs, or at least their ancestors were. They were in this ecological niche specifically because the terrestrial niches were all taken up and they couldn't compete in them.
Are not extinct is a fun topic for which there is surprising evidence. But
oh, Ian, we're gonna have so much fun talking about more living dinosaurs. I am all for it. I love this topic. Keep it coming.
If a living dinosaur were captured today, would that cause evolutionists to abandon their religion?
Why would it? Why would it? We do have living dinosaurs today. Just first to clarify, I had dinosaurs for dinner last night. So, dinosaurs are avian dinosaurs are a thing. That birds are extant dinosaur species. But you're talking about non-avian dinosaurs. We discovered one alive today. Why? Why on earth would that overturn evolution? What impact would that have on evolution at all? I don't understand why that's an argument that it would be a problem for evolution, or that evolution would work to cover it up, or the people that support evolution would work to cover it up. It doesn't make any sense to me why you think that would change anything about what we already know. It would just be a new data point on a spectrum of evidence. It'd be a new data point to say, yeah, we have a extant dinosaur or marine reptile that all its relatives were thought to have died out in the Mesozoic. But here we are.
Of course not. Just look what happened with the coelacanth.
Right.
Its shocking discovery was likened to finding a triceratops grazing on the grass in your backyard.
If you think that the habitat that the coelacanth was found in was comparable to someone's backyard, this is a deep sea fish that lives, I believe the novel discovery was off the coast of Madagascar, very deep down, I think greater than 30 meters down. And if your backyard is comparable to 30 meters down off the distant coast of Africa, then your backyard is very different than mine, Ian.
A living dinosaur would simply be met with comments of, "Isn't it amazing that they've survived all these hundreds of millions of years?" I say that because that's exactly what they said in response to finding living coelacanth.
We can say that about dinosaurs too. It's amazing that they survived for hundreds of millions of years, because that little sparrow outside your window tweeting comes from a long line of dinosauria that goes back to, well, technically it goes back to Luca. We all do. You yourself, Ian, are an amazing product of evolutionary lineages going back actually billions of years, Ian. Billions of years. Isn't that amazing? It is amazing. I agree with you on that. In that any group managed to survive to modern times is evident. It's evident that we have groups of organisms that survive to modern times. Now, you're talking about megafauna. The chances of finding megafauna of dinosaurian proportions alive today, even in the oceans, is pretty slim, especially because these are organisms that are going to have to come to the surface to breathe. There's no evidence that plesiosaurs were necessarily deep sea animals, or that they even lived in deep oceans like what you're talking about with off the coast of New Zealand, where this creature was trawled up. Because most marine reptiles, we have a plethora of them that were found in largely warm, shallow seas of the Mesozoic.
But finding a living dinosaur might cause some to then accept the currently unacceptable evidence of originally preserved biomatter in dinosaur remains and dinosaur and human footprints found together.
Oh, that's a whole bag of worms, Ian, we need to talk about.
But Ian, wait. If you're suggesting dinosaurs are still alive, does that mean Noah would have brought some on the ark to survive the flood? How is that even possible?
As a quick reminder to everyone, hit that like button. It actually does help.
No, you can hit the like button on their crap if you want. I'm not going to. Real quick, I just want to go over some of the things that Matt has put into the comment section here. So just a moment. We are going to, or not into the comment section, sorry, into the description, to the video description. And we're going to look at some evidence that that they went over here. Okay, so photographs, tissue examination, and measurements were made by Japanese scientists. The findings point to the descendant of a plesiosaur. Baker, 1988. I'm guessing this is in reference to Yano's claim, the original person who examined the organism. It was a marine biologist, from what I'm understanding. But there's been some observations made here that I don't know if I agree with his determination. I don't think a lot of the marine biology community agreed with his interpretation. So, first thing that they say here is sharks float when they die. They do not have bones. They also do not have red fatty flesh. All right, where did I just Googled it because to me it's a common fact. Again, I talk about taphonomy. I was in carnivore and we discussed ecosystems and ecology of different organisms, sharks do sink. When they die, they do not float. It even puts that in bold right here. Just all you have to Google is do sharks float when they die, and you'll know that Ian is full of it, Matt. You don't have to believe everything that Ian says. This is absolutely bunk. Ask a marine biologist if you are interested. But sharks sink right to the bottom because they do not have swim bladders like fish. Because fish will have a swim bladder that even after they die, it's still full of air and they float. But sharks do not. All right, and then we have do not have red fatty flesh. I don't see any evidence that there was any fat on there. I don't see anything in the image that looks like fat. But I'm definitely willing to be corrected on that if you think that there's something on that organism that looks like fat to you. All right, then we have, which is usually dark, it fades to white. Okay, witnesses and pictures tell us that there was no dorsal fin, 𝗶𝗶 and 𝗃𝗏𝗏, 1978. So why would the fins disappear but the most volatile pectoral fins remain? Decomposition. That's taphonomy. Look into it. It's the way that organisms decay, Matt. It's a field of science, so you should be able to find pretty robust evidence as to the decomposition of any marine organism if you take the time to look into it. And yes, the pectoral fins do tend to stick around a little bit longer than the dorsal fin as these organisms decay. You can see a dead basking shark here, and it has a dorsal fin. All right, that's Metro. That's this one. Different circumstances are going to cause different decomposition. But yeah, this is just a single organism that this one's pectoral fin is still attached. That does not mean that every time that the shark decays that its pectoral fin is going to stay intact. Different organisms, some might lose their head, some might lose their tail. This one lost the upper part of its tail dorsal. So yeah, let's see, what else do we got? 𝗶𝗏 and 𝗃𝗏𝗏 suggest that the long cylindrical ribs in the carcass are not found in Coelacanths, which is, yeah, I'm talking about the proposal that it was a sea turtle. The pelvic hind fins were said by some of the crewmen to be similar in size to the pectoral, as in plesiosaurs, which we covered, saying, that is essentially what we call claspers in marine biology. Shark claspers. The carcass was found outside the range of basking sharks reside 30 miles east of Christchurch in New Zealand. Also, I think it's outside of the range of what plesiosaurs could have lived in too. They were, again, warm, shallow sea dwellers. They were reptiles, which don't do especially well in cold waters like those around New Zealand. Photograph measurements and tissue samples all showed it was probably a plesiosaur. Citation needed. It gives us Paul Taylor, 1987. Where did you get that from, Matt? Let me see. Paul Taylor. Paul Taylor. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure what that quote is, but the tissue samples, from what I understand, did not show it was probably a plesiosaur. I don't think that's what they show at all. All analysis that I've looked into of this organism indicate that it was a basking shark. So let's go ahead and edit that, Matt, to say photographs and measurements and tissue samples all show that it was probably a basking shark. That would probably be more accurate for you to have in your description here. So probably go ahead and update that. From photograph sketches and careful measurements and flipper samples from tissue analysis, and had every appearance of being a plesiosaur or sea-dwelling dinosaur. Again, we're quoting Taylor. I guess this. Well, that's a different Taylor, Ian Taylor. So there's a couple of different authors that he's citing here. I just kind of browsed through this. I wish I had taken some time and pulled up these authors to see what they're talking about. The carcass was entangled in a fishing net at a depth of about 300 meters, almost 1,000 feet. This massive creature weighed about 4,000 pounds. Yeah, dead basking shark. This is what a dead basilisk shark looks like. It's not a basilisk shark, man. It's a basking shark. Let's see. Let's see what you... Okay, so this is a dead basking shark, but it is not in any state of decomposition that, or not in any state of decomposition even comparable to our Zuiyo-maru carcass. It's just, looks fairly fresh, maybe a few days old, not in the state of decomposition, but this one that you showed earlier is a bit closer to the stage of decomposition. But don't worry, I have better pictures for us here in a second. After discovery, the major press was suppressing the plesiosaur story. Carl Hubbs of the Scripps Institute of Oceanography in Jola, California, felt it was probably a small whale so rotten that most of the flesh had sloughed off. George Zug, curator of reptiles and amphibians at the Smithsonian Institute, proposed the creature was a decayed leatherback sea turtle. Yeah, lots of speculation here, but I think the most evidence points to a basking shark. Newsweek article briefly discussed the South Pacific monster without taking sides. A few months later, a more detailed article by John Coaster appeared in Ocean Magazine. Coaster mentioned the preliminary tissue results and comments by Western scientists supporting the shark interpretation, but also quoted Yano and others suggesting that the issue was not yet settled. Coaster himself suggested that the small size of the creature's head, well-defined spinal column, and lack of dorsal fin did not support the shark identification. All right, so let's look at, I'm so happy to show you guys this. How well is this showing up? Just a second here. Yes, good. Okay, so we're going to look at what a basking shark at a similar state of decomposition looks like. So here's our first example here. This is just the head. But you see all the fibers that they're talking about. These much clearer pictures taken on a modern camera do show us what those fibers actually look like in real life. Also have an eye and the small head. Look at the small head on this thing. That is because of the way that basking sharks decay. They leave behind what appears to be a small head. This is the upper snoot here, the upper part of the skull, what would become called the cranium, and then this is actually the upper lip. This that looks like the lower jaw on these remains. This is actually the maxilla. The mandible's gone. The mandible's long gone. But the way that they decompose makes it look like this is the maxilla and the cranium are not fused like they are in tetrapods, and most tetrapods anyway. They are separate. So the maxilla and the mandible both jaws are mobile and able to move. That helps with filter feeding. And most sharks have this kind of layout, but it's really prevalent in basking sharks because they open their mouths so wide. So the decomposing remains of these organisms, when they lose that jaw because the mandible comes off really quick in decomposition, it leaves behind what appears to be a long neck, which is actually where the mouth was, and then it leaves this little portion here that looks like a small head, but it's really not. It's the upper cranium and the maxilla. The mandible, again, is gone. And then you have a big barrel-shaped body. So we got what appears to be, because of the way that these decompose, what appears to be a long-bodied organism with a long neck and small head. This is the way that basking sharks decompose naturally, and this one happened to wash ashore. It looks very much like our Zuiyo-maru corpse. just because of the state of decomposition and the coloration too, very similar. Obviously, we have better cameras now, so we can capture the colors don't quite blur together so much, and some of the finer details can now be seen as to the way that these organisms just collapse and fall apart. First you lose your jaw, you lose your dorsal fin. These things are well documented. This guy right here is missing a dorsal fin. Oh no, is that the dorsal fin right there? That might be the dorsal fin. Looks kind of far back, but that might be the dorsal fin. He might still have his. Doesn't appear in this picture though, which was the one I was going off of, because there you have the organism, and when the tide goes back out, laying on the beach decomposing. So yes, these organisms do they do wash up like this, and we are able to examine them even in modern times that have the same structure and age of decomposition and everything that you see in your mystery beast that you're wanting to claim as a plesiosaur. All right, so let's see, what else do we say? We're just advertising their ministry and all that. But yes, so I am not convinced by Ian Juby's video here. I don't know if anybody else was, but I find it unconvincing. I find it that they are ad hoc reasoning to what this organism could be. Just my opinion, of course. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments down below. I'll be happy to field my responses to you there. Okay, one last thing.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come into the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land, all that the hail has left." So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought up an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind had brought up the locusts. The locusts came up all over the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt. Such a dense swarm of locusts as had never been seen before, nor ever will be seen again. They covered the face of the whole land, so that the land was darkened, and they ate all the plants in the land, and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field throughout the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh hastily called upon Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now, therefore, forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me." So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord, and the Lord turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the rocks and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go.